Welcome to this week's episode of Church Unscripted. We are so glad you're here with us. And if you have not subscribed, make sure you hit the subscription button on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform. And as you do that, make sure you hit the notification bell because then it'll notify you on your phone or your favorite platform, maybe it's a TV, to watch Church Unscripted with us. I've got Pastor Eric and Pastor David here with us this week. And Eric, we're in the middle of a series. And you talked about treasure, so we're just going to treasure hunt today, right?
Sounds good.
Yeah, see? So can you kind of give us a little bit of a summary of the sermon, and then we can dive into talking about the parable?
Yeah, absolutely. This is week 4. It's an 8-week series, so we're halfway done. We have been in Matthew 13 for these 4 weeks, and we'll be in Matthew 13 for one more of these weeks. But there's so many parables in this chapter, and a lot of them are only about 1 or 2 verses long, and that's the case with this weekend. Matthew 13, verse 43 through 46, just 3 verses, carry two different parables, but they are really packed full of significance. And I think we can learn a lot about the kingdom of heaven if we really decipher these things the right way. And basically the 2 parables are very, very simple. There is a man who found a treasure hidden in a field. The Bible says that when he found it, he reburied it so nobody else would discover it, stumble upon it. And then he went and sold everything he had in order to buy the field, because once he bought the field, then the treasure underneath it would be legally his. And then the next parable, verse 45 and 46, is that a merchant was looking for a specific kind of pearl. Some versions call it the pearl of great price. It's a pearl that's worth, based upon the analogy, like $1 million pearl, whatever that would be. But he says once he discovered it, he went again and sold everything he had to afford that pearl, and he did it in joy. So Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like that. It's a treasure, it's a pearl that is more valuable than anything that you can chase after. But that really wasn't the question that we really focused on. The question we focused on was who has the legal right to own the treasure and to own the pearl. And so we learned 3 particular principles of the kingdom based upon the 2 different men who purchased the field to own the treasure and the man who purchased the pearl. And that is the kingdom of heaven rightfully belongs to, first of all, those with Christ-like integrity. Secondly, to those who have godly wisdom. And third, to those who are willing to lose everything in order to get it. And so there's all kinds of scripture we pulled into this to kind of support that point. But by the end of the day, we understood that the kingdom of heaven is not, it's not just for anyone and everyone who sees it and wants it. It's for those who step into it the right way. You don't get to steal your way into the kingdom of heaven. You don't get to lie your way in. You don't get to cheat your way in. There is one way into the kingdom of heaven, and that's through Jesus. And then there's one way to live in the kingdom of heaven. And that's what we talked about this last weekend.
Well, I definitely have a lot to talk about treasure. I love treasure hunting. You know, I found out at Indiana State Parks, did you know this? You can't use metal detectors. They don't let you look for treasure. Really? I was like, that's crazy. What if you lose like a ring or something?
Yeah, why do they do that?
Because I have no idea. That would be amazing.
Unless they don't want like a whole bunch of pot marks or holes dug in the fields. But I mean, if there's treasure, I thought they would want it to be discovered.
Yeah.
So,
well, on the other hand, we can't buy the state park. So, I mean,
that's true.
It breaks down with
that's
this
analogy. Absolutely.
So if someone would somehow inherit a treasure, okay, without ever knowing about it, do you think they're missing out on something deeper than the wealth itself? You know, that hard-won wisdom or integrity that comes from seeking it and working hard to get that treasure?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think the question itself is probably outside the metaphor that Jesus gives in Matthew 13. However, I think you bring up a good point, and that is that there's a whole lot of people who have an inheritance that just completely miss it. And so if we're chasing after things in life, even as followers of Jesus, chasing after things in life because it's drawing us to them, like career ambitions or a certain amount of 401k, whatever that might be, and we're pursuing those things at the expense of the kingdom, I think to your point, we're missing out on something significantly more valuable, and we're giving our life to something that in the end will just rust away and become at some point worthless. And we've all heard that analogy. It's, whenever we die, nobody gets to bring a U-Haul to their grave. It's you die with just you and 6 feet, down, and that's it. And so the question is, what are you chasing after? What are you pursuing? And if you're a follower of Jesus, you have this inheritance of the kingdom of heaven that Jesus has invited you to take hold of. And so loosen your grip on the things of this world. This is all throughout the Bible, so that you can grab a hold of the kingdom of heaven.
Do you have anything to add, David, to that?
No, not really.
Not really. Okay. So this parable does highlight selling everything for the kingdom. What's one comfort or possession that you think would be the hardest for a typical person to relinquish, and why might it be worth it from a Jesus-centered perspective?
I have my answer. I want to hear from you, David. I do, because I actually thought through this last week, and I had to come to a conclusion and make a prayer that I've never prayed before in my time here at Brookside. But I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the person. But I think it's anything that brings comfort. I mean, anything that, like, would I actually be willing to sell my house, my cars, my phone? Like, would I don't know. I think there's so many things that we have that make us comfortable. And so I think I think the one thing that Jesus would ask us to get rid of is our comfort for the sake of his kingdom. But I don't know that I could say for everyone this is the one thing. But that's just
that makes sense.
Thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty typical answer. If people are being honest with themselves, right, whatever the possessions are, those things provide a certain level of comfort, perhaps even identity, peace of mind in as well. And I think if you can identify what those things are, and you imagine the day where you lose those things, it's almost like you're losing yourself.
Yeah.
And that's honestly how I feel about my leadership over Brookside. I love Brookside so much, and this is my family. This is my church. I have no desire to leave whatsoever. Neither do Heather and I feel like God is calling us to leave anywhere else. But I just had to recognize when I was praying the other day, I feel like I'm holding very, very tightly to Brookside in my leadership over Brookside. And so when things don't go as well as I want them to go, I feel like I myself am a failure. And when things go really well, I'm like, look what I've done. And so I think, and I didn't even know I was preaching on this when I was thinking through this, but I almost felt like God was saying, that, by the way, is my church, and those are my people, and I am ultimately responsible for them. And if I ever call you away somewhere else, and I'm not hearing that, I don't want to go anywhere else. What I hold so tightly to Brookside that I'm going to say, no, God, I'm not going to do that. But if he says, I've got a kingdom agenda, and he's this grand chess master, right, throughout eternity. He knows how to move his players, you and I, around on his ministry chessboard, so that he can have the greatest win at the end of the day. And if what he's saying is, for whatever next season of your life, I'm going to have you over here, I'm like, no, I'm not going, because this is my church. And so I've had to loosen my grip. It doesn't mean I'm letting go. It just means I'm loosening my grip and saying, I'm going to pursue the kingdom of heaven more than I'm going to pursue my position, and allow my identity to be more in that than in my position here. So, but I just want people to hear clearly, I'm not going anywhere, nor do I feel like God's calling me anywhere else. It's just something I think I was holding too tightly to. Does that make sense? Or you're like, dude, that's bad leadership?
No, I think that's great. I think that's a challenging viewpoint for all of us. I mean, is there anything, not just ministry wise, but job wise? I mean, there's plenty of people that hate their job, but they're making a lot of money, and that's not actually where God wants them to be. But because they make a lot of money, they're staying there, and they might be unhappy or pursuing the wrong things. And I think that transparency and vulnerability can encourage people in their own lives to reevaluate what are the things that I'm holding on to tightly instead of the kingdom of heaven. I think that's
because I don't actually think that this is a principle that you just apply to everything. Oh, just sell all your stuff for the kingdom. Like, right. I think that would kind of be foolish. It makes me think of Marie Kondo. Do you guys know about the minimalist lady?
No.
She comes into people's houses and she organizes their stuff. And how she does it, I found ironic. There's a famous scene from one of it was a TV show for a while. She would pick up someone's T-shirt, right? Have you know what I'm? David's smirking already. He's already ready.
I watched a bit of her stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you take a T-shirt and she goes, "Does this bring you joy?" And you say yes or no. right? Yes or no answer. If it doesn't bring you joy, it goes in the pile that's getting donated or taken away from your house, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I look at this parable and it says, then in his joy, he goes and sells all he has and buys the field. I think of it like, really, you guys are all identifying the thing that is really core. It's not a thing that we need to get rid of or sell. It's our own perspective on what actually brings us joy. Because a t-shirt, I'm watching this and I'm like, this is absurd. A t-shirt doesn't bring you joy.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious? How does this bring you joy? Yeah. Or this sweatshirt or, whatever it is. Yeah. Just going through people's clothes. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wait, what does that even mean? Because the reality is when Jesus is using the term joy, he's talking about that ultimate joy that is eternity focused, where a t-shirt's like a thing you wear,
right?
Or an experience you might have. And I think what we all said is really you're holding that looser than you really feel comfortable doing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because that's really, that's the core of what's going on.
Yeah.
So I know Marie Kondo is a little bit an obscure reference, but I got to bring in one a week at Church Unscripted, right? So,
it's interesting. It sparked a thought in my mind. There's a certain person who's very obscure in the New Testament. His name is Demas, Demas, and both in Colossians chapter 4 and then also in Philemon chapter 1, Paul recognizes this guy named Demas as a fellow worker, a companion of Paul, right? And so he's traveling with him from place to place, planting churches, preaching the gospel. But then when you come to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 10, it's a completely different story. Paul tells Timothy that Demas has left him. He doesn't use that language. He said he has deserted me because he loved this world and he's gone to Thessalonica. Thessalonica is like the Las Vegas or the New York City of the day. And so he's like, I'm tired of this ministry thing. I'm tired of building the kingdom of heaven. I want my own kingdom. And so he abandoned the kingdom to take a hold of the world. And you hear nothing of Demas anymore. You have no idea what he contributed to the kingdom. When you talk about Hebrews 11, he's not mentioned in there. And so he abandoned the greater value of the kingdom for the lesser value of this world. And Paul and the rest of the church were hurt because of it. And I'm like, man, I certainly hope that by the time I see Jesus, I am far more like Paul, who lost everything. We talked about that this weekend, who was willing to lose everything for the sake of Christ, as opposed to Demas, who's like, I'm willing to sacrifice the kingdom and I've sacrificed Jesus for the sake of building my own kingdom.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I think that's a very good reference. Mm-hmm. So when you described the community on Sunday, you described them as thinking the treasure seeker was crazy.
Yeah.
So again, Demas probably had people thinking he's crazy because he's following Jesus.
Right.
Do you believe living out in Jesus' teachings are almost always going to look irrational to the world around us? Is there any practical examples of how people think it's irrational? David's ready to say something.
Well, I'm trying to think. I can think of,
giving your money away. That's a big one.
Yeah,
right?
I was just thinking about, but non-believers do that too.
True.
I was just thinking about like the way that we should live versus the way that we oftentimes do live don't add up. But I think if we're truly living the way that Jesus called us to live, the first thing I thought of was love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Like that is crazy.
But that's part of the kingdom, right?
Right. So yeah, naturally it's going to look crazy. If you have an enemy and you love them through whatever bad things they're saying or doing or promoting against you, like, yeah, you're going to look crazy.
Yeah. Well, rationality and irrationality, by definition, has to have a reference point, right? And so if you are saying, are there commands of Jesus that are irrational, if the context is a local body of believers, it's probably far less irrational, far more rational if you're all in that same mindset. But you and I hear stories all the time of how Christian integrity and Christian lifestyle is seen as irrational in the secular world. How many people have we heard of who have left, like you referenced, a very high-paying job for the sake of being in ministry? Yeah. And when their colleagues say, what are you doing? That's crazy. The person says, you have no idea what I'm called to, and I feel such a peace and a joy. They get into the ministry and they're like, man, I wish I could have done this, years ago. We have somebody on our very staff who's doing that right now. and just the sheer joy. They're not making nearly as much as they did in the secular world, right? But man, just the joy that's coming from that person. But think about it. I mean, it's not just money. It's forgive your enemy as Christ has forgiven you. Turn the other cheek. That's ridiculous. I need to get revenge. I need to get even. When you pray for those who persecute you, now I'm not praying for them. I'm going after them.
Yeah, right.
This is, save sexual intimacy until the marriage bed. What does the Bible say? Keep the marriage bed pure. That's ridiculous. That's actually bad advice, right? Because you need to test out your future spouse to make sure that it works well, whatever it is, right? So you have to look at the context or the people who are listening to the lifestyle and integrity of Christianity. And when the further away from Jesus you get, the more irrational it looks.
Well, and one of the things, you mentioned the word integrity, and that's probably the core of even that is keeping your integrity, even when it doesn't benefit you, is irrational to the world. Because if you can get away with it, why not do it?
Yeah.
That's what people say. So I think there's a lot that goes into that, but I think that both of these parables, the people gave up all that they had for the kingdom or all the benefits that they could get from the world. And so if someone thinks they're living with integrity, but their beliefs about right or wrong clash with Christ's teachings, with what Jesus teaches here, as well as the kingdom in other passages, how does one truly self-examine and then try to realign with kingdom values, what Jesus actually teaches? Do you understand? Like, there's a lot of people out there that would say, oh, yeah, I'm in the kingdom, I'm following Jesus. And then you listen to him talk more and you're like, that's not what the Bible teaches.
Yeah. Well, integrity has to have a standard, right?
Yeah.
If you were a German living in Nazi Germany during World War II and you were sold out to the Nazi cause, then the most integritous decision that you had is to turn in a Jew and to send them to a concentration camp. That was the right thing to do in Nazi Germany. If you lived if you lived in communist China at certain times, I think it still happens today, but maybe not nearly as much. It was the right thing to do to rat out underground churches and to expose the church growth to the communist government. And that's still happening today. And so you have to have the standard by which your integrity is measured too. And if you're a follower of Jesus, but right and wrong is defined by something different than Jesus, then that is a integrous life, and that's a problem if you're going to call yourself a follower of Jesus.
You got anything to add to that, David?
No, I think that's good. I think it's. I was just thinking about just looking at what Jesus actually says. Like, a lot of our Bibles have red letters, right? And so drawing yourself more in line with the things that he actually said is how you can live with integrity. But that's really all.
I would say the greatest time influence in our lives that you identified, Eric, is the culture around us. And yet we want the loudest voice to be Jesus. And that's really kind of the balance of moving towards integrity rather than having a lack of integrity. And so there's a lot of things that you mentioned. You mentioned some other passages. And one of the things that I was fascinated with, and maybe it's just because how my brain works, but was when you talked about the pearl merchant's expertise, a little bit. And do you think the church undervalues the skill and discernment gained from, say, secular work that might actually prepare us for some kingdom wisdom? Life experience that's found outside the church that we actually bring into the church and like, oh, whoa. Like, I'm really identifying those things that Jesus said, and now I can apply them back to my work or back to my place, other place. What do you guys think? Secular coming into the church, does that actually prepare us for more kingdom wisdom and being able to take it back?
Yeah, you don't have to be a follower of Jesus to know that a massive amount of debt is not a good thing for your financial world, right?
I don't know. Yeah. Some people think it's okay.
You don't have to be a follower of Jesus to know that sleeping around all over the city is not good for a marriage.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just general wisdom that you don't have to be a follower of Jesus to recognize. It might take you some time, like the School of Hard Knocks, to recognize what that wisdom is. But I think there's a lot of wisdom that even those who are not followers of Jesus are going to get. And that's evident all over the place. But I think there's a very specific kind of wisdom that that only followers of Jesus embrace, and that is what I think the gospel is called, the foolishness of the cross. I mean, the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, right? But to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. And I think that's the kind of wisdom that ultimately is part of the key to getting into the kingdom of heaven. It's, okay, debt's bad, sleeping around's bad, all that stuff. Drugs bad. But the cross and the resurrection, that is a depth of wisdom that if you're not a follower of Jesus, you will never embrace.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things in your question, you said bringing secular wisdom, secular experience into the church or whatever. I was going to separate the kingdom of heaven and church because I think a lot of times what we can do is separate. I believe that they can live in the kingdom of heaven in the secular world. Like, that's what we're all called to do. And so I think it is important to recognize, like, there is wisdom in the things that you experience in the secular world, but it's also, allowing those things to fall under the authority of Scripture, and then to live in the kingdom of heaven around this world, not just bring it to church. That was just one of the things.
Well, and I even think of Romans 1. So what both of you guys said is Romans 1 talks about people are going to know about God through creation, just life. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that people can have God moments outside of the church, a building, a space, because God is with us everywhere, and he's working in mysterious ways. Eric, on Sunday, you mentioned something I think I found interesting because, you're Mr. Musselman. Sorry. You mentioned...
Not quite, but
you mentioned building your integrity muscle.
Yeah.
So I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing at the whole thing. And my Arnold voice was bad.
That was your Arnold
Arnold?
voice?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, you got to work on it.
Okay, all right. So is there an opposite of building a integrity muscle? Maybe there's a form of spiritual atrophy where you had integrity and then you continually compromise small principles. Is there something like that? And maybe explain how we can fight against that.
Oh, absolutely. Your integrity is never just static. It's either building, it's either growing, or to your language, it's atrophying. And that's a really good analogy to it. The question is, how do you build that muscle?
How do you build that muscle? Essentially fight against those small, atrophying on small principles when you compromise.
Oh, yeah.
Compromising on small things.
I think you're right. It begins with the small things, but I also think it begins by not overcommitting yourself. If you are an alcoholic, don't say, all right, because of Jesus, I'm never taking a drink ever again, right? You're just going to fail over and over again. If you have a temper, don't say, I'm always going to be a loving, peaceful person from this day on. It's say, I'm just going to take that next hill. I'm not ready to take Mount Everest, but I am ready to take this next hill. And then when I conquer that hill, I'll be able to take a hill that's a little bit bigger. And eventually, I'm going to have an integrity that's going to be able to conquer Mount Everest. But it's kind of like the baby step thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cliche, I know it is, but this seems to be the pattern that God uses to mature us and to develop our faith and our integrity.
And it seems like, I know I've done this where I set a goal and the goal is so far out that I can't see the steps between here and that goal. And so then when I don't meet that goal, I'm like, oh, I failed. But then I actually moved 6 baby steps forward, out of 10 or whatever it might be. Sure. So I think a lot of us need to take that perspective that you described, because otherwise we can become overwhelmed or be like, oh, I failed at this. And then we just give up everything,
Yeah.
So there's a hidden danger you described. This hidden danger is pursuing the kingdom for its rewards rather than relationship with Christ itself. So how do we stay away from that pitfall? Because Jesus does describe rewards, not just in this parable, but in general, there are rewards to the kingdom, whether in the present day or the eternal, like for eternity. So how do we avoid the pitfall of caring more about that than we do Jesus?
Well, you've just stepped onto a landmine that I don't know if a lot of us recognize that we step on. I mean, there's a very, very clear passage where the scenario is people have passed away and they're now in heaven. They're now in judgment, right? And Jesus says, I don't know you. And they say, well, how come? Because we've done incredible things for you, man. We cast out demons for you. We healed people for you. And Jesus says, I don't know you. Depart from me. And the implication is very scary. you can do a lot of things for Jesus, even impressive things that I'm not casting demons out. At least I don't think I am. I'm not putting my hand on people's heads and healing them. At least I don't think I am. So they're doing more things for Jesus than I think I'm capable of doing right now. But the thing is, if you do those things and you do them not hoping to also know Jesus, then you're just doing them to get attention, doing them to get like earthly reward. I mean, Jesus even calls out the Pharisees for praying super loud on the public squares. He says, you pray out loud, you contort your face when you're fasting so that people can give you their attention. And Jesus says, that's the only reward you're going to receive. And so the challenge is not what can I do for Jesus or what reward is there going to be for me in heaven. It's I just really want Jesus. I mean, God himself tells Abraham in the Old Testament, I am your very great reward. And I think if we come to our relationship with God as saying, all right, what can you get me? Like a genie in the bottle, right? And, well, man, we're missing it. Yeah. The challenge is not how much we do for Jesus and what we get from him. The challenge is, do I just know him? Yeah. And does he know me?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I was literally going to say, I mean, I think it's referencing Jesus as the treasure hidden in the field. Are you willing to give up everything to know Jesus, to know the treasure? And I think you're right. There's so many times that we view like, it's, oh, God's going to bless you and God's going to bless you. And it's like, well, yeah, he might, but the blessing is actually the greatest miracle ever. And that's that you're free from sin and hell. And that's the treasure, that you get to have a relationship with Jesus. Everything else is just a bonus.
Window dressing.
Yeah, it's just, and I think we get it mixed up because maybe our consumeristic culture doesn't help us in that, where we like the new shiny things. But I think it's important to really view Jesus as our treasure.
You've seen those videos, I think we all have, of countries in the world that Christianity is illegal. You can't build a church. In fact, even owning a Bible will get you thrown into prison. And we've seen these underground videos of Bibles actually making it into the country and getting to these underground churches. And when that box is opened up, it's like kid in a candy store. And these people rush to grab their very first Bible. And when they grab them, they're weeping and they're smelling the Bible and they're hugging each other. And it's like, whoa, how many Bibles do I have in my house?
Yeah.
And most of them are probably collecting dust except for the one that I'm using. And it's like, oh my goodness. And here we think, we got to have, I'm not saying it's wrong. We got to have this nice LED screen. If we want to be a good church, we got to do this. And there's so many cases across the world where it's, if you just have a Bible so you can hear the words of Jesus, then, oh my, that's the best possession you've got. And I'm like, there is something about poverty that elevates the value of Jesus and the kingdom in your life.
Well, and the thing that you just mentioned, poverty. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent because there is a spiritual poverty to material prosperity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see? So there's a sense of I've got what I need, so it's hard to see that I need anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that's indicative of many different cultures all over the world, because you find the cultures where the Bible's not allowed, like you described, or maybe even poorer cultures, and you see Christians just going out and like having a more rich spiritual experience, because when they pray things like the Lord's Prayer, they're like, give us this day our daily bread, and they mean it because they don't have bread.
Yeah, right.
And so I think there is some depth of understanding to that. Do I think people that have material possessions can also have spiritual prosperity? Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's possible. It's an opportunity. But we also need to realize, like in all these parables that we've been talking about with the kingdom, he sold what he has and he bought the kingdom. So he bought into what the kingdom is. And he got rid of all the things it was not. And we just talked about it last week about giving a portion, like letting God produce a portion of us for the kingdom. It's like, well, God wants all of us for his kingdom, not just a portion of us.
John, there's some specific miracles in the book of Acts that whenever we read these things, we're like, yes, Jesus, let's go, kingdom of heaven. And a couple of those are when the church first just kind of blows up and out of Jerusalem. Like it's called the diaspora, and this is when Christianity was persecuted in Jerusalem. So all these Christian Jews like just blew up and went everywhere. And this is part of the way that the Great Commission, Jesus says, you're going to be my disciples, and you're going to preach the gospel in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And your question, like, how's that going to happen? And so in the early chapters of Acts, it does happen because of the persecution. But what's interesting is there's a very specific event that caused it to happen, and that is the martyrdom of Stephen. And we celebrate the growth of the church, the expansion of the gospel, and that happened because Stephen was willing to lose his life and be the first martyr. And then later on, you read in Acts, and this miracle of Peter being in prison, and in the middle of the night, the angel shows up and unlocks the door, right? I mean, incredible miracle. I want that to happen to me, right? But you forget that the event that led to them being put in prison in the first place was the fact that James, one of Jesus' 12 disciples, was murdered. Not murder, well, capital punishment, I think, is murder. But because the Bible says that Herod saw that that pleased the people, he also went and he arrested Peter and threw him in prison. And that's when the miracle came. And so I think what we're noticing a pattern is simply this. If we want the kingdom to grow and expand and take over the world, that's awesome. It's normally, I think the pattern is that it's going to come on the back of some massive loss. And it might be somebody's life. And I hope it's not mine. I hope it's not your lives. I hope it's not our family's lives. But Jesus died, and then we got salvation.
I'm going to end with that this week. I feel like that's a good end because when we look at these parables, it's about giving all of ourselves to the kingdom and what sacrifice that might look like. And that's going to look differently for each one of us. But as you've been following us through this series, we've been talking about the kingdom a lot. And so we're looking forward to the next few weeks, next few episodes in the same series. If you've been following along, make sure you hit the subscription button below. And we're going to see you next week on Church Unscripted.